despair to stop and enjoy some milk and cookies. But this year, there will be no time for milk and cookies. Quite the contrary. Santa may not have enough time to make all of his mistake-free stops and deliveries. Packages may get mixed up, things could be misdelivered, and children could be left without gifts. And children farther along down Santa's delivery route, the other communities around might experience similar inaccuracies and mistakes if Santa is running behind. This just cannot be allowed to happen. Hence, the reason I am here tonight, I need the help of you, city council members, council president, the governance of the city of Johnstown, in order to make accurate and timely deliveries of toys and gifts to all of these exceptionally well-behaved children, including, but not limited to, Addie, Alec, Amelia, Benton, Braxton, Claire, Ellie, Emma, Emmy, Izzy, Jen, Sophia, Natalie, Thomas, Wyatt, and Zev. So, in the interest of timeliness, accuracy, brevity, and good old-fashioned Christmas spirit, I am asking you, learned members of this city council, the Johnstown City governing body, Police Chief Rusty Smart, and his crew of excellent law enforcement officers. I'm asking that you permit me, Santa Claus, and my team of reindeer pulling my sleigh to drive a little faster than normal through the streets and skies of the city of Johnstown, quite possibly, even occasionally, exceeding the normal posted speed limits. Remember, exceptionally well-behaved children and youth in Johnstown community deserve a little something extra this Christmas. So won't you please help Santa make this happen for them? Please allow Santa Claus to ignore those speed limits on Christmas Eve so Santa can make his deliveries as quickly as possible to all of the exceptional, well-behaved children in this community. Thank you for your time and your consideration of this matter.
Thank you, Santa. So kids, we have an issue. So Santa has asked if we can waive the speed limit in Johnstown on Christmas Eve. What should we do? Should we
Vote for the speed limit.
vote for the speed limit? Who thinks we should raise the speed limit for Santa? All of you? Emma, you don't?
Want your presents. Emma doesn't think so?
Okay, so we should lift the speed limit just for Santa and his reindeer, right? Do all of you kids vote yes for that? Raise your hand again. Let's see your hands. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Wyatt?
Santa is checking too to make sure.
Okay, we have enough votes that passes. Now, city council's got to vote on it, okay? So I got to read a resolution real quick, okay? It says a resolution amending the City of Johnstown Traffic Code and Council Rules of Order, Resolution 2024-54.
What do you think?
Since you guys said yes, I make a motion that we pass this resolution 2024-54. Do I have a second?
I'll second. I'll second.
Mayor Barnard,
Yes.
Wes Coble,
Yes.
Jeff Barr, Bob Orsini,
Yes.
Dave Seeland,
Yes.
Ryan Green,
Yes.
Tiffany Hollis.
Yes.
We have waived the speed limit. Santa, your request has been granted.
Thank you very much. God bless you all. Merry Christmas. See you all very soon. And I understand there's some awards to be passed out tonight.
Yes, sir, just a second.
Santa just wants to make it plain that he loves people who help others. That's what we need in this world right now.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and call this council meeting to order. It is 6:39. I'm asking you kids to stay up here just for a couple minutes. And Ms. Monroe, if you'd like to call the roll.
Mayor Barnard,
Here.
Tiffany Hollis,
Here.
Ryan Green,
Here.
Dave Seeland,
Here.
Jeff Barr, Wes Coble,
Here.
Bob Orsini.
Here. Okay, if I could ask you all to please stand for invocation, please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. We have a special person tonight who's going to do the prayer. Miss Addie, would you like to say the prayer real quick? No? Izzy? Okay, I'll say the prayer. Dear Jesus, thank you for this day. Thank you for all you've given us. Thank you for our police officers and all they do for us. Lord, please continue to guide and bless us, lead as counsel. Lord, and thank you for this wonderful city. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, guys. Okay. We've all received the agenda. There is one item I'd like to make a change to on the agenda, and that is to remove the executive session to consider the purchase, sale of property. That's the only change I have for tonight. Does anyone else have any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, was the will of council for the approval of agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda as written with the removal of the executive session.
I'll second that.
Are all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
First item is we have a ceremony tonight. Chief Smart, if you'd like to go ahead.
Mr. Dax, if you'd like to go up to the podium. Kind of set the stage while he makes his way to the podium. July 13th of this year, there was a call for service involving Officer Pesci and Officer Lopez, and it was an individual at our Trailhead Park. Individual was sitting in his vehicle, believed to be sleeping unresponsive. Our officers arrived, and Mr. Dax is the individual that his life was saved on that day, and he would like to say some words and thank the officers for what they did that day. You can go ahead, Mr. Dax, and the
Yes.
officers, if you want to go ahead and come up.
Can I say a joke?
Sure.
I can't move my children.
No, Amelia. No.
Good evening. As was mentioned before, the night of or the day of Saturday, July 13th, unfortunately, I had not slept well at all the night before. I had to drive my brother and niece to the Columbus airport, and I was so sleepy and tired that occasionally my brother would reach over and correct my steering. So when we got to the Columbus airport, my brother said, "You know, Rich," he said, "you really ought to find a place perhaps and pull over and take a little nap on the way home." And I said, "I think that's a good idea." So apparently I was tired enough that I missed the 270 East exit and wound up on Route 62, which brought me into the Johnstown area. Eventually I spotted a parking lot wide open, and I thought, well, here's a spot. So I pulled in, and it was a quite warm day, although I hadn't paid much attention because I had air conditioning in the car. But I also knew that my fuel level was getting low, and so I turned the car off and decided to, take a little snooze. And that's the last I remember about July 13th. When I woke up, I was in the intensive care unit of St. Anne's Hospital, and to add further confusion, I was chained to my bed. And I started to think, I thought, what did I do? And I thought, well, I knew I was terribly tired. I thought, did I cause an accident and kill somebody? Or why am I chained in bed here? And shortly thereafter, a nurse came in and told me that, I had suffered heat exhaustion, or heat stroke, I guess it was. And when they gradually started to bring my temperature down, when I got to the hospital, I guess it was 106.5. And so I was not long for this world at that time. And due to the quick actions of the officers and of the emergency staff at St. Anne's, they gradually brought my temperature down. But I assume I must have been in some sort of delirium, because they said I was trying to fight everybody off, and thus the chains to the bed and so forth. And so later that morning, they finally came in and took the chains off and everything. And I remember an officer, I'm not sure if it was Officer Pesci or Officer Lopez, but an officer stuck his head in the room mid-morning and looked at me and said, you really need to get off of that stuff. And what he was referring to is I had a few prescription bottles in the console of my car. And also, I'm a piano technician. I work on pianos daily. And so in my tool bag, I had hypodermic syringes that I used to inject sticky keys and sticky action parts in piano actions. So, of course, not being there to defend myself, the worst was assumed. And so I was guilty, you know, and I was passed out. I had no idea what was going on. But it was quite a day because I had the psychiatrist came in and tried to get me to admit that I was trying to commit suicide. And other doctors were in, you know, they were closely examining me, trying to figure out what in the heck I did to myself and why, when it was all really just a real calamity of errors. You know, had I been thinking, I would have found a place in the shade. I would have left the windows cracked a bit. But no, everything was sealed up tight, and I sat there in the hot sun. The way I understand it, a couple walking through the park noticed this old man slumped over his wheel, and they called 911 then for help, which brought officers Pecci and Lopez to my rescue. And they actually had to break in the rear window on the passenger side of my car to gain access and drag my lifeless form out. And then the ambulance took me on to St. Anne's. So anyway, officers, I'm here this evening to thank you both very much for your timely assistance in getting me out of that vehicle and onto the hospital so that I could once again resume my life as a piano technician. Thank you so much.
This is a job well done by these gentlemen. I'd like another round of applause. Parents okay with pictures?
I was gonna say, if you can move.
Smile well, Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for coming tonight.
Could do it now before she, and then she can get a picture of us.
Yeah.
Hey, Teresa, real quick. So before you take the picture, I just wanted to let the kids introduce themselves, but I wanted to let everybody know, we decided as a council that we spend a lot of time up here away from our families. We wanted to include our families for one meeting tonight and let them be part of what we do. For some reason, kids think this is fun. So we wanted to include them up here tonight. So if we could start with Ms. Claire, if you could stand up and say your name to everybody, let them know who you are.
Louder, honey.
My name is Claire.
And you belong to who? Bob Orsini. Okay, next.
Emma.
Emma, you're up.
Where's Emma? Where's Emma?
Hey, I know you're louder than that.
And I belong to.
Nice.
Okay.
My name is Sophia and I belong to West Cole. My name is Isabel Conrad and I belong to Pennsylvania. My name is Natalie and I belong to Tiffany Hollis. My name is Ellie and I belong to Tiffany Hollis.
Oh boy, here we go. Go.
My name is Tiffany Hollis.
Good job.
It's good for my name is Addie Burnell and I belong to Donnie Burnell.
So thank you, kids, for coming. Thank you
Oh,
for
we
being
got
part of
one more.
tonight.
One more.
Oh, we got one more, sorry.
And this is Thomas. He's here with me.
So thank you guys again. One picture.
All right. Smile.
Okay, you guys are all dismissed. Thank you for coming tonight.
Good job.
Thank you, good job.
We need to play that back when they're all 16. Have along with who?
Yep. Yep.
Well done.
Not bad.
My kids are, it's an embarrassment. Daughter would probably do it.
Hurry, give me a kiss. Give you a kiss.
I would.
Oh, goodness, good job. You did so good.
Thank you so much.
You're dead great.
Thank you.
It's like a 20-year-old person in a 3-year-old body.
I know.
She is feisty.
She's what?
Feisty.
Two.
She's like 20 years old in a 2-year-old body.
Yeah. She
She's only
really
two?
is. Yeah, she's 2.
I thought she was two. So we have, moving on to item number 8, action on minutes. We received the November 19th and December 3rd minutes. Does anyone have any changes or additions to these minutes? Hearing none, what is the will of council on these two items?
Make a motion to approve November 19th and December 3rd minutes as written.
I was gonna do them separate.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Make a motion to approve November 19th minutes.
Second.
All in favor of approval of November 19th?
Aye. Make another motion to approve minutes from December 3rd, 2024.
Second.
Dave Seeland,
Yes.
Ryan Green,
Yes.
Tiffany Hollis,
Yes.
Mayor Barnard,
Yes.
Wes Cobble,
Yes.
Bob Orsini.
Abstain. I was absent.
Okay. Moving on to citizens' comments on matters not on the agenda. Ms. Monroe, do you have any items?
No.
Speaker slips. Does anyone here like to speak on anything not on the agenda? Okay, moving forward. Council committee reports. Planning and zoning met on December 4th. Their next meeting is January 14th at 6:30 in council chambers. Anything to report from that meeting?
No, not for that one.
Okay. Design Review Board met on December 4th. Their next meeting is also the 14th. Ms. Monroe, is there anything from that meeting?
They just had the window sign for a business on South Main, and then a solar panel was approved for a home on Tyler Station.
Okay. Design Guidelines Steering Committee ad hoc meeting met on December 18th at 5:30 in council chambers. Or no, they're meeting December 18th, sorry. So in a week. Safety and Service, their next meeting is January 7th at 5 PM in council chambers. Township Liaison Committee's next meeting is January 9th at 4 PM in council chambers. And Finance's next meeting is January 21st in council chambers. We received the direct reports from the police chief. Does any council member have any questions for the chief on his report he submitted?
I did have, is he out? I was gonna
Oh.
ask there. I was just curious about the break-ins. Was that the car break-ins that was the spike for that month, or was that something else? I was assuming it was the car break-ins over in Leavedale, but I was just wanting to double check on that, I guess. But
I can confirm with the chief. If I had to make an assumption, I would say your assumption is correct. So I can connect with him before the meeting's out and probably get you an answer.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll circle back to that in other business,
Okay.
the follow-up. We have no table legislation. The first item for ordinances and resolutions is council decision on the zoning map amendment. Ordinance 30-2024, an ordinance to accept the zoning text amendment. This was submitted, this is the second reading of this item. So we will go ahead and pass it off. Sean, who would you like to speak on this one?
Give me one moment. I'm trying to get our recorder. Our other one's on the fritz, so we're stuck with this one, which is not operating as well as I'd like it. So
Oh, what the chief is walking in, so we'll give you a little sec. Chief, Councilman Coble had a question on the break-ins.
Yes.
Was that the cars over in Leafy Dell?
Yes, and it was also Licking County, Upper Arlington, New Albany, and I want to say Newark as well. So it wasn't just our jurisdiction that got hit that night. They were carrying out it all night long. So,
Was there any resolution of that at all?
Unfortunate. The case is still being investigated. I don't know out of all those agencies who's still investigating it, but I know that any leads we're still looking into. So we have a theory of who they are. Now it's just time to prove it.
Does anyone else have any questions for Chief? Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you for your report.
Back to me.
Back to you, Sean.
Okay. So, last week we had the public hearing on this, and there were some questions that were presented by the applicant, and as promised, I wanted to have an opportunity for our staff to just kind of unpack the staff report. So, if you don't mind, I would like to have Trevor with MKSK acting as our planner who wrote the staff report, just give a walkthrough. It doesn't have to be all of it, but if you have additional questions that aren't addressed in his first statement, feel free to fire away for Trevor. And then, if appropriate, Yaz has anything to add. And then if the applicant has any other final comments, and then we can obviously go back to our staff for additional answers to the questions if you see fit.
Thank you. Trevor?
Thank you all. Good evening. So I'll walk you through the staff report that was put together. I believe this starts on, I think it's page 20 or 54 of your agenda. So as Sean mentioned, this was a request to amend the allowable uses within the LM zoning district. So this is not a site-specific rezoning or specifically focused on one piece of property. This would be a change to the entirety of the LM zoning district. So any property that has LM zoning would have its use rights changed based on this amendment. Anytime I go through one of these, reviews, I start with a comprehensive plan that, as always, is kind of the guiding document for the city, the long-term vision. And so currently, the LM zoning district is located within 3 different comprehensive plan designations. One is employment, which is geared for creating jobs, building wealth in the city, things like that. The other is the downtown core, which is generally intended to be more of a pedestrian area, dining, entertainment, uses like that. And the third is suburban residential, which is, as the name implies, intended for residential uses. And the reason that I reviewed that part of the comprehensive plan, or the consistency between the comprehensive plan and the zoning designation, is to see if there would be any potential conflicts if this use change were adopted. And so, on the face of it, the employment land use calls for the types of uses that are being proposed in the light manufacturing zoning district, but the remainder of the remainder of the comprehensive plan designations do not call for those sorts of employment uses. So I do have some concerns there of adopting this change because it would be not in alignment with what your comprehensive plan calls for. Now, that's not to say that couldn't be addressed in the future, but as it stands today, there's a lot of LM zoning that's not within that employment land use. So that was the first concern of mine. The other topic that I covered in the staff report in comparison to other zoning districts. So one of the reasons that the applicant has requested this change is because these uses that they're proposing are not allowed in any other zoning district within the city. The table at the bottom of page 23 illustrates the proposed uses within the amendment and the recently adopted Johnstown Plan Development, the one near the Intel site on the southern part of the city. All of the uses that are being proposed by the applicant are already allowable within that plan development district. So from my standpoint, the uses that are being proposed are allowed within the city. They may have to go through some additional steps that someone in the LM might not because it's a plan development, but those uses are allowed within the city. Additionally, starting on page 24 of 54, which is page 5 of 6 of your staff report, the code that you have, chapter 1137.06, has standards that should be reviewed based on any code change criteria. And of those, I had some concerns related to the adjacent land use and zoning. Again, I just addressed those as part of the comprehensive plan. Effects of the proposed amendment on access and traffic flow. This is item C near the bottom of the page. No traffic study or any traffic study has been completed as part of this, so as city's planner, I don't have any I don't have any information to go based off of to evaluate whether or not there will or will not be traffic issues based on this change. I will say, though, that I think we're all familiar with the ongoing issues of the intersection of 37 and 62 within downtown. The Transportation Improvement District for Licking County has extensively studied all of the routes in this area. That has been identified as a intersection that will continue to be problematic likely for the foreseeable future. There's money being set aside right now in studying that intersection for potential remedies. I'm concerned with that because I don't know what potentially greatly expanding those uses north of that intersection will do to that intersection within downtown. That's the primary route in and out of the industrial park currently, and then all vehicle traffic, the majority of vehicle traffic coming in and out of there will end up flowing through the intersection of downtown. Let's see. Additionally, this is on the last page of the report on page 66. Item E, relationship of the proposed use to the adequacy of available services and to general expansion plans. There was, again, similar to the traffic study, there was no utility study or anything like that submitted with this request. We all know that industrial users have the potential to use significant amounts of water. We also know that the city has limited capacity to just immediately expand the available capacity of potable water to its users. So with that, not understanding what the demands could be and what the city's available capacity is, I again have concern with that. I don't think I can give you a clear answer as to whether or not this decision would or would not impact the ability for the city to serve those uses. So I'll kind of stop there. I put three options, or three items under the conclusion that we can talk about further if you want to entertain this change, but I don't want to go down that path unless you all would like to have that conversation. So with that, unless Yaz or Sean have anything else to add, I'll turn it back to the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean, or Yaz, do you have either of you have anything to add?
Just from a legal perspective, there is no legal requirement to act or not act, to grant or not grant this request. At this point, this is a policy consideration. Zoning is a law, right? So they're asking you to change the law to allow these additional uses across the limited manufacturing zoning district. And it's a policy consideration whether you want to do that or not. You've got a staff report that has identified issues from the land use planning perspective. And so I just wanted to lay that out there.
Thank you. Sean?
I think staff did a terrific job, and I'm sure there might be some questions that bubble to the surface and won't be available to try to answer any of those. But I think Trevor hit the nail on the head. And, you know, when you're trying to ask for a recommendation from staff, whether this should be permitted, staff is going to look at the exposure from the effects of that particular permitted use or proposed permitted uses. And at this point, the exposure and the liability that we could potentially see with the infrastructure demands, it just is too great of an unknown. So we obviously are going to defer to be the more cautionary recommendation and make sure that whatever you would entertain from a permitted use would not exhaust the infrastructure of that particular area. So really that's what it comes down to is information provided. At this point, we can't confidently give you a report that says if you would allow this, this won't happen. And that's a tall order. The given area of the LM district is quite expansive. And if you're looking at land use planning, you could have a 50-acre site that could be introduced to warehouse. And if you took a typical warehouse situation with the amount of tractor trailer traffic, you would take that 50 acres and you would expand that to the entirety of it, because that is the potential and the possibility that could exist. So that would be something that we would need from a traffic study standpoint to say that's not going to exhaust the limitations of 62 and 37, which I think from a high level, we all would agree that there's issues that exist right there. So does that summarize some things in a nutshell? I think you got a line. So I didn't get yelled at, so you're good.
Okay. I will give the applicant a chance to come speak.
Good afternoon. Once again, my name is Craig Moncrief. I belong to my wife, Lauren Moncrief. I'm an attorney with the Plank Law Firm here with the applicant, Tim Teepee. Main gist of this, like I said, we are happy to discuss this in further detail. This is for zoning code. We understand that what we provided may not exactly meet what you're looking for, but I think there could be something there. Tim is happy to answer any questions you may have about tenants that he typically has, that Roebling Development Company has had, what could come to this area. To briefly address some of staff reports, comments. One, I think it's important to note that the comprehensive plan is a guiding document. It's not law. What the law says right now is this is a manufacturing district with the idea that this property is intended to be developed for industrial. That's what we are held to. That's all we can deal with. So we are looking to bring a development that is your standard light industrial type of development. The planned district was mentioned. I wish there was a way to get in there. As currently constructed, there's just no way for this property or this area, the industrial park, to go to that district. So this is really the only remedy at stake. So that's why we wanted to propose something that's similar to the planned district as far as uses, even potentially procedure, understanding there's traffic concerns. Maybe there's a way to have a traffic analysis done as part of a site plan review, kind of similar to what is in the planned district. I'll say, frankly, looking at traffic studies, talking to engineers, looking at the International Traffic Code, tends to be with broad strokes, manufacturing, warehousing. I don't see how anything comes up as far as if the storage of televisions is permitted today, how traffic would be any different for the storage of furniture or something like that. So I think if we're talking maybe service contractors, I could see it, but I think a lot of what we're proposing is really no different than what is permitted there today. Same with utilities. Look, if we can't meet utility standards, then you can't develop this property. That's part of an engineering review. I don't think that changes really at all, but like I said, we're open to discussing this, whether it's procedure or something to try to alleviate your concerns and do what we can. So I think that's all I have. Tim, if you have anything else you want to add, but thank you for your time.
Thank you. Council, turn this over to you. Do you have any questions for the city staff or for the applicant?
Do you currently own property in that area?
We do not. We have the land under contract right now.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I do.
Go ahead.
The proposed uses, is that a all or none? Can we strike some is that possible?
Yeah, I mean, as the council, you all can determine if you would like to entertain a smaller subset of that list, sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Keep asking if you got more questions.
Well, I just have lots of thoughts. I mean, I would agree. It's no secret. I think that we need to be looking at creating jobs and increasing revenue for the city. And I think the best way to do that is through job creation. So looking at this list, I would say no to warehousing and storage and electrical vehicle charging stations, because I would be looking at uses that will help create employment. I know that sort of opposes the traffic concerns, but I think our community spoke and did not pass our tax increase. Therefore, we have to do what we have to do to make sure that we increase the revenue for the city, and with that comes heavier traffic. That's just my thought process, where I'm thinking along the lines of this. I do think that our uses are antiquated in the industrial park, and it is something that we definitely should be revisiting.
I 100% agree with you that we've got to bring more jobs, we've got to bring more employment to Johnstown. It's just weighing the traffic impact of that city center down there and how much that impacts
And I do agree with him. I think that there are ways that we can, with site plan analysis, you know, all of the things that come into play when they start to develop it. Maybe we need to make that a part of it. So I think this is probably just the beginning of maybe a little bit longer process to make sure that we have everything in place to do that. But again, none of us want more traffic, but we also don't have the revenue. So unfortunately, without a tax increase, that is what we're looking at, is heavier traffic.
Any other council members?
I would agree with the idea about warehousing and storing. I mean, this, again, from my previous experience, the amount of traffic that does not bring the higher levels of revenue that we really
The risk
want to
isn't worth the
drive
reward on that one,
anyway.
yeah, I agree.
I'm open to the idea of changing some of the zoning requirements or restrictions in that area, but it would definitely have to come with a sharper pencil and a little bit more of a finer tuned idea of what is coming into the area versus a broader brushstroke like this is right now.
Would you be interested in tabling to try to work through that?
I mean,
I would be very interested in that.
I would like to see it go back to zoning.
yeah, I would say start
The
fresh with
recommendation
a.
from zoning is to not allow, to not approve. It's gonna take a clear error or omission for me to go against a committee.
Well,
What did-
I think,
sorry.
I think
what
what
did
it
zoning come
stems from, so this came to us, there's not a lot of answers in here. When it came to the zoning commission, there were questions that didn't necessarily have concrete answers. And to go ahead and change something fundamentally, change a whole district in here fundamentally, I don't think that they felt that it was on them in one application to go ahead and change that. I think if you ask them, as if this was part of a larger project, larger conversation to fundamentally change a district, I think that they would agree that yes, we have antiquated zoning code in there. I mean, not a lot of people clamoring for pottery these days. But, I mean, that's something that doesn't take zoning, that takes, starting at council with a designation of this is something we're interested in and coming back to a committee. I would be for it. I mean, as you can see in here, with our comprehensive plan, you have suburban residential listed in there. I would argue residential is an average of 6 trips a day, on average with cars, versus if you have shift work in any sort of manufacturing process, you may get 2 or 3. You may get more if you have a third shift or something, but it's hard to say. But if suburban residential is a use that's okay in there, you're not exactly signaling that you don't want more traffic in that area. So I would be for more review on this and a much larger time-consuming process from council on where we should go to update light manufacturing.
So Teresa and Yaz, how do we get it to go back to zoning? Like if we vote to deny it, can it be brought back up to zoning by the applicant, but with
Yes.
changes?
Yes, and, zoning changes can be initiated by this council, by the Planning and Zoning Commission itself, or by an applicant. And so, a denial here would not prohibit this applicant or the Planning and Zoning Commission or council, or a combination of 2 or more of those folks to present another application, work with staff to sharpen the pencil, refine some of the uses, and then bring it back through the same process.
And if we table it, it stays at council, it doesn't go back to zoning?
That's correct.
Yeah, any changes, at least that I've done while I've been here on zoning, have been, a change of this magnitude has been done at the behest of council. It was never something that zoning initiated on its own and said, hey, we're gonna fundamentally alter a zoning district. It was something that council came to us with. So I think looking at it from a perspective of our zoning commission, it was not something that should be changed within one application.
So I just want to make sure I'm understanding this. If we vote no on an ordinance to accept the zoning tax amendment, it fails, correct?
Yeah, let me double check how it's drafted. That's correct.
Okay.
And yeah, it's, so just a little bit of background. The application is brought in the affirmative. Will you change this? The ordinance is put for you in the affirmative. You are changing this, so a no vote would be a no to the zoning amendment, i.e. accepting the recommendation from.
And if council votes this no, can we waive the fee for zoning, for them to bring it back to zoning?
I believe council does have that discretion.
I'll jump in if you don't mind.
Please.
So there's three ways that something like a review can be initiated. One can be an applicant, one can be council, and one can be by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So if it's initiated by council or Planning and Zoning Commission, obviously there's not a fee associated with it. The fee is typically for the applicant because it's by their request. So if council or zoning wanted to take up the initiative on their own to do something,
But then if they, well, no, they haven't, they've applied for, have they paid any fees?
they have for the zoning text amendment.
Okay.
So if that were to fail tonight, it doesn't exclude you all from taking up an initiative to reevaluate it.
I just don't want to see them have to repay any additional money for something that we need to look at.
And I know there's been some conversations about the antiquatedness of the code, and I don't disagree that there's verbiage in there that is antiquated. I believe one of those was mentioned as pottery, and I'm gonna loop Trevor probably in on some of this. Striking those because of the antiquated non-existence of that particular industry probably makes sense. But I'll go back and say, what uses are you wanting to permit in there? And once we define what uses you want to permit, staff will then go back and say, we need some type of traffic analysis to support the fact that this won't overwhelm the downtown. Now, that's a policy decision. If you feel congestion in the downtown is okay due to the revenue that you can produce, that's for something you all to weigh and decide what extent of pain you're willing to deal with in order to gain additional revenue. But I do want to put that in a different box. We do have another opportunity area that council has identified on the other side of town. Whenever they went through the exercise of zoning that a PD district, a heavy emphasis was given on the infrastructure that exists out there and the potential of the infrastructure. So noting that there was problems that existed on this side of town, a reasoning of that being zoned the way it was because of the infrastructure. So I don't know that it's limiting your ability to have industry here. It's maybe limiting in specific areas, but by no means is it limiting. I mean, we have a pretty large expansive area out there, and in your comprehensive plan, you've identified a very large swath of land to be used in a plethora of ranges that obviously has more of an infrastructure that you would see in that particular piece. So I do want to allow our staff to unpack the traffic study piece as well as the engineering piece, because I don't want your decision tonight to be weighed upon maybe some different information. As far as, and I'll let Trevor or Yaz jump into the comment that was given about if you zone it now, we can commit to doing a traffic study later, and the same effect of if you zone it now, we can do an engineering study later, and council at that point council or zoning could at that point deny the ability of the project to go through. I don't know that that's accurate, but I want to check with legal and in zoning, the planner, to make sure that I'm not off base there.
Yeah, you're not, if you change the permitted uses in the zoning district and someone brings a project to you with that use, they have the right to proceed so long as other development standards are met, not traffic and utilities and engineering, building height, setbacks, things like that. So unlike a PD district, there is not a separate secondary development process that requires those types of things when a particular development is through. So unlike a rezoning of a particular piece for a particular development, this is a straight zoning district. The use is allowed, it can go in.
And just add one thing quickly, I think that changing the zoning and allowing for all the studies to be done after is going to put you on defense from day one. I've been in that position before at a previous municipality that I worked for, and it was, sure, every application that came in had a traffic study submitted with it, but we as the staff didn't know, is an extra 1,000 trips, is that okay? Like, we didn't have a baseline to go off with, so sure, we were getting studies from applicants, but we didn't know how that actually impacted the city. So that's really where my concerns stem from, is we don't have a good baseline to go from, in my opinion. There's been a lot of different studies go on, but not one specifically related to injecting significantly a large amount of traffic onto one thoroughfare through the city. So that is a way to do it. Sure, you could change the zoning tonight and then review the studies later, but I think it's gonna make my job, Sean's job, and your job more difficult in the future, because it's always gonna be, we did this traffic study or we did this utility study, where's our approval? And it's gonna be hard to say, it's gonna be hard to deny those requests, because again, we don't have a backstop of saying, we can only allow 1,000 more trips through downtown and you're gonna do 5,000. I don't know that number, and so that's where that concern stems from.
Trevor, what would you be looking for at this stage? A full-blown traffic impact study, or just a comparison between, a traffic engineer testifying, saying, hey, this...
No, it would need to be a study that's certified by a traffic engineer that does some sort of estimate in terms of the volume of traffic that can be generated based on those expanded uses across the acreage of all of the LM district, and what it would do to specific intersections within the city as well. There's general studies, sometimes you do 1, 3, 5 mile. I don't have preference on that, but it would need to be enough that you pick up on the areas that we already know are problematic, i.e. like 67 or 62 and 37, probably on down 62 a little bit because there's other commercial properties down that way. That's something that, I don't have a good answer off the top of my head, but it would need to be something that encompasses a fairly large geography within the city, because ultimately that traffic doesn't just start and end on those parcels. They come and go, assuming from much further around this area, the metro, really. So I think without understanding that are we gonna cause a problem at 310 and 60 or 37 because of this? Do you need to add a turn lane somewhere? That's the type of stuff that, even if you all, as the applicant, wouldn't be responsible for installing a turn lane 2 miles away, the city needs to know that they might be on the hook for that, or start working with the Transportation Improvement District to understand what they might need to do to accomplish some of those goals, because they're gonna have to do things in response to what you all do as well.
If I could pile on with Trevor's, I'm glad you mentioned the TID. So if you look at Intel as an example, obviously huge impact on an area that didn't have the infrastructure. The state, excluding what New Albany has provided, the state with the Licking County TID threw $90 million at it, realizing that there's going to be traffic impacts. Industry or state funding should help support these types of things. For you to take on that burden by yourself, and I love the fact that Trevor pointed out 6237, but it might not be 6237, it might be other areas that are affected. Your residents are going to be mad or barking at you to fix their problems that you didn't create, but you obviously got the revenue. But will the revenue created be enough to backfill the requirement of the infrastructure needed? So if you're only generating an additional $10,000 a year, but you got to put in a $5 million traffic signal, you're going to have a long time before your ROI on that is exhausted. But I also want to point out, and probably the last comment I'll make, there is a process aside from what exists right now that we do have on the books. So I don't want you to walk away from this saying, well, gosh, I don't want an opportunity to walk away, and maybe it does fit all the criteria. In our codified ordinance, we have a process that if someone has a specific use that they want to bring before this body, would first go to zoning, but then this body, and the process would look very much or exactly like what we're doing today, that can be done. It was done with the medical marijuana associated with it. I think there was a couple other conditional uses brought into effect. So this isn't to say that if you deny this, that you're shutting down industry in that area. There's still an absolute process, and it can be done in a matter of 2.5 months. The window's still open. it's just a smaller window, maybe not be a door, but there's easily a path forward, but that's for a specific use. Then you can start to granularly look at the traffic impact that it would have. For instance, if you had, I'll create a little humor, a plastics manufacturing facility that had a 100,000 square foot building that employed 5 people, and you had the numbers to support that, you as a council could then make a decision to allow for that specific use, plastic molding, whatever the case may be, or another variety of the NACS code that could exist. So it doesn't disallow you from still allowing that area to evolve and to grow and to facilitate your manufacturing needs, but it doesn't leave you vulnerable. You have the opportunity, kind of think of it in a way as that is your final development plan, where the PD district has a preliminary and a final. That's a route, if you want to look at it in that regard, that is your final development plan. They can still come in and submit an individualized application for a specific site. Am I wrong on any of that?
For a PD?
For the light manufacturing, if somebody had a specific permitted use that they wanted to propose to council, they could bring it up.
Oh, sure, yeah.
That would just be this process, right?
Yeah, it's the exact same process.
There's no use variance process or anything like that.
There is no use variance, you're correct. Zoning doesn't do a variance for use.
So final question for staff, I guess, short of a traffic impact study, is there any room for discussion here as far as if we were to come back with a new application and pay the fee again, as far as what uses you would be interested in, or is this strictly, you need a traffic impact study or we won't?
I mean, based on what I saw in this application, if the grouping of uses are similar in a revised application, I think I'm going to still have the same concerns. I can't say that for sure without seeing that revised application, but the general grouping of uses, especially given that they're all industrial in nature, all have the potential to have significant impacts. So I think, yeah, short of having additional information, I don't see how I can change my recommendation.
I'm saying feedback on changing uses, things like that, as far as removing some.
I mean, that's really up to the council. I'm here to review whether or not, based on current uses, the existing materials that they have adopted, whether or not the city will or will not see impacts. It's really up to the council.
Well, just from the staff report perspective.
I really don't have a response to that.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from council?
Few points on this. Number one, with the traffic impact study, question for Trevor, how do you really get an accurate impact study when you don't know which businesses are gonna go in there?
Sure. So generally in that sort of thing, it would always be a range. It won't be a number of like, you're gonna have X number of trips per day. It will always be a high and low range.
Right.
Normally engineers go with some sort of like moderate and aggressive approach or something like that to address that range. But they will generally they would take this list of allowable uses that are being proposed, run some basic analysis, probably using some input from our team of like generally how many square feet of building could you get.
Just average industry standard type things,
That's
but
what
you're
they-
speculating at the end of the day, correct?
Well, the IT, the Institute of Transportation Engineers has pretty reliable data
Okay.
for a variety of, not just industrial uses, but very, very specific uses. They can give estimate, I mean, it will be a wide range again, but you can get pretty specific with
Okay.
that, so it's possible. But it is, at the end of the day, it is a projection and it is an estimate.
When they do that, do they look at intersections and say this intersection can handle 50,000 cars a day and you're at 25,000 or you're at 100,000?
A
Do
good
they
traffic
provide
study-
that?
A good traffic study should, yes, because it would basically take they would be able, a transportation engineer could likely just look at the intersection of 62 and 37 with some basic additional data like signal timing and give you a good estimate of how many cars per hour that intersection can accomplish. And then with basic traffic counts, you can get how close you are to that capacity. So for example, the downtown intersection, let's say it can do 50,000 cars a day. That traffic study might say you're at 20, or it might say you're already at 60, and that's why you're seeing problems. So, yeah, a good traffic study should do that.
When was the last traffic study on 32, or 37, or 62?
I know that it was partially studied during the overall TID initiative whenever Intel was announced, and there's additional money that's being spent right now from the TID also specifically studying that intersection. But I wouldn't necessarily call that it's not a traffic study in the same realm of what I'm asking for, which is being analyzed.
It's a similar, like, so the TID, what you're hearing about over the last year and a half with that $90 million, that came about because of it was either MS or CT Consultants, I think it was MS. MS Consultants essentially took land use projection modeling. So you take a land use, you put it here, if it develops, you're gonna create anticipated X amount of traffic. And then they start plugging that in your roadway segments, and then they start having that interact with intersections. That is how the TID evaluated which intersections and which improvements needed to be made. They didn't just say, we're gonna need this, this, and this. They let that study take place. And then after the study came back, they said, okay, with the land use modeling that we have, whether this is gonna be residential, or this is gonna flip commercial, or this is gonna flip industrial, these are all the elements that we're baking into it. They were able to put road traffic numbers associated with each specific road segment, and then they started to intersect those, and they said, oh my gosh, we're gonna have a problem here, we're gonna have a problem here, we're gonna have a problem here. So, anticipation of Intel, very, very similar or exactly the same, but probably on a smaller scale for this particular study, would be something to that effect. And you would want it to be at least in a couple mile range to protect yourself, obviously. You could have an intersection problem at Jersey because of this. You could have an intersection problem at 6237. You could have an intersection problem at Oregon. You could have an intersection problem at Bigelow. All those things along the chain are going to be affected by the land use that you're now permitting in that specific area. So I think that's the type of study that Trevor's saying, in order to feel comfortable from a staff recommendation, we would need to see those models. And if the models existed that said, okay, this intersection's not going to be negatively impacted or not going to need to be upgraded on your dime. And then if the developer wants to say, hey, we're willing to take that on our shoulders, we'll make the improvements to the intersection, we'll take the funds out of our pocket because we know we're creating the issue, we'll go ahead and participate in that. And so that's what happens sometimes as well. Obviously, we have the PD district, we're going to run traffic analysis and traffic ratios. They're going to have to come up with some type of commitment whenever they're increasing the traffic on our roadways so that we're not left holding the bag. So,
On that, just to clarify very quickly, the reason that we didn't bring these sorts of items up whenever the plan development was being written and adopted last year was because there are mechanisms built into that document, to Sean's point, that if, based on a traffic study, issues are going to arise, there is a financial mechanism built into that document that will cover those improvements. That is different than what is being proposed here. That financial mechanism does not exist in your straight zoned districts like the LM zoning district is. So that is the difference between those two cases. I just wanted to point that out.
Do you know if there were any recent traffic studies in this area? Because I would assume it would be under the assumption that this area would be developed under its zoning, which is industrial.
The most recent one that was done was the larger study that was done for the TID. I believe MS Consultants was the consultant that did that on behalf of the TID. I don't have a copy of it, but there was a large study that encompassed the majority of this area within there.
And we could look at that, because if this property's been zoned industrial, then traffic assumptions have been based on industrial uses.
You can look at it.
yeah, I'm not sure I follow. Yeah, you could look at it, but if it led to a conclusion that the roadway segment was going to be overwhelmed, staff would then still come back with a recommendation of no. But just because it was modeled doesn't mean that the modeling does the work. The modeling has to prove that it won't affect it negatively. So I just want to point that out. I didn't know if that's where you were going with it. Well, if we just produce a study and the study shows that it's going to be X amount of cars, that it's okay. I don't know that that's an argument that we probably want to make, so.
Okay, does council have any more questions? Okay, hearing none. Is there any questions or comments from the public?
Yeah, I have.
You can come up here. Yep.
So I'm really confused, okay, so I'm confused a lot. But, because I had 67 acres when I bought it, it was light industrial, that's in the industrial park. And you want residential housing there now, which Mr. Green said that's going to give you more traffic? Is that what the comprehensive plan now says that, right? So Mr. Green said that that's even going to get you even more traffic.
Good.
So I'm really confused. And historically, that whole area was always light manufacturing. And if you go back to the comprehensive plans in the past, I actually have another 80 acres that's next to that property. That was also in the comprehensive plan as light industrial, right? If you look at the old comprehensive plans. And where I really have a problem with what's happening here today is historically, it's always been a certain way. And then all of a sudden it changes, okay? As a property owner, I bought that based on light manufacturing because I am a manufacturer. We own some factories. And Sean, we don't have 5 people, but we have around 30 people, 25, 30 people. So you can be very careful. I'm not saying that you need to have warehousing. Warehousing doesn't benefit anybody. Well, that's my personal opinion. But if you have the right kind of manufacturing that comes in, I think it can generate money for the city with low traffic. And I know I've had discussions with Sean that when you're looking at the growth of manufacturing that you're going to have in this area, your employment of the people that are going to come work in the industrial park on the north side, they're going to come from a different area than where they come from today. Because as you develop south of town, the pay scale is going to go up really high for those jobs. And some of the people that you have now that may be working in the current industrial park, they're probably going to switch employers. And my factories are over in Heath and Hebron, and we saw that over time. As Etna and west of us developed, we lost all our employees that were on that side of town. And we pick everybody from northeast of Newark going over to Zanesville because it's too far a drive. So people will work wherever they can earn a certain amount of money and have the shortest amount of drive. And I think that this whole area is going to change, and you need to think about that. And I'm not saying that you should approve what they're recommending. I would say you need to take your pen and your pencil to it and decide what you really want in that park. But I think it's also, it's really hurting the current landholders that bought the land based on what was in the old comprehensive plan and the way the zoning was. And you're really penalizing us that have historically owned the property. I know these are people that want to develop it, but we have two people, you have the Johnson family and my family, that have owned the properties there for years with the intention that it would eventually become developed, and it may be manufacturing. If you want housing, you need to tell us that, and you need to support that. If you don't support the housing and you don't support light manufacturing, then the property shouldn't really be in the city, because you can't do anything with it. So
The one thing I want to clarify is we have not changed the zoning. Your property is still zoned the same way.
the comprehensive plan.
The comprehensive. So when the comprehensive plan was done by us, the comprehensive plan 20 or 30 years ago, when that industrial park, this area had a much different outlook. We never knew that all that farmland to the south, I call it the south, that area to the south where Intel is, would ever be developed and turned into that area. So the area that was within Johnstown that they could create industrial area was there. So now as we try to forecast what the city's going to go, that was what the comprehensive plan was. How do we forecast where we want to see things go in the future first? And nothing against city leaders from 30 years ago, but where they put businesses then, does it make sense to still put businesses there, or should we put them in other spots? And so we're just trying to lay out the city to function much better in the future. And so you can still do your industrial there. It's just, if the zoning changes, this is what we wanted to see the zoning go to by the comprehensive plan.
Yeah, and the problem, Mr. Bonner, I should call you that instead of Donnie. But the problem that you have with that is that, when we originally bought the property, I don't know, a number of years ago, we had a different group of people here, and they were all for any kind of development that they could possibly get, right? And we had Jim Leonard was here, and Jim Blair, and Bailey was the planner. And they were all for everything, right? Whatever you want to do. They'd come and meet with me over at my factories over in the Heath area. But you change council, you change people, then all of a sudden what you have all changes. And I think that also sets a bad precedent for the community. Any kind of developer that comes in here, developments take years to play out, right? So what's to make a developer believe that 2 years from now, we're not going to have different council members, that the views of that council may change, right? So how do you even do a development? right? Just from a philosophical point of view. So I'm not saying that you need to accept what they're proposing. I'm saying, really look at what you want. If you want high-paying jobs with low traffic, look at the types of people that would come in there that would give you that, right? Don't have warehousing, don't have just a blanket thing, right? And if you want housing, just realize that housing is going to also bring you, as Mr. Green said, a lot more traffic than the right kind of manufacturing. So it's up to you, to the council, and we respect you and respect your decisions. But we would just caution you to think about it and think about what do you really want? And then put it in place and so that we as property owners can manage to what you want, okay? And I'm not saying that I'm gonna ever develop that property into manufacturing. I'm not saying I would ever develop it into housing. But I think it's philosophically, it's inappropriate what's happening here today. So that's my opinion. And you may differ with that opinion, so.
Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you, thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I did want to clarify one point, just to kind of insulate staff and the current council. I don't know what policies were set forth by previous administrations and previous councils. What I will tell you is this staff, and I think this council, is looking at the codified ordinances, which are essentially staff's guiding documents. Since I've been here, that light manufacturing district has not changed in any way. We are simply enforcing what was on the books. So whether previous staff or previous council chose to enforce the codified ordinance or not, that was their decision. I'm just telling you, that's how staff should operate, is we need to go by the codified ordinances. And if you should see fit that they need to be changed, then all of that to be said, that's the level of consistency. To Mr. Benton's point, it shouldn't be which council or which staff starts to come in here. The guiding document should be the ordinance that's in place, and that should be established and followed by whatever staff you have current or at a latter date or a previous date. So I didn't want you to make it sound like we were subjectively saying, we're not gonna authorize this. We would be doing a disservice to you if we said, your ordinances that you all passed or that are on the books, they're all fine and dandy, but I don't agree with them. So I'm gonna go ahead and give a free pass to this particular industry. I wouldn't be doing my job, and I'm not doing my service to this council. So I don't think myself or the other staff would ever recommend going against what you all have put in place as a codified ordinance. So I wanted to clarify that. I know Mr. Benton wasn't referencing that in a negative way towards us.
Not at all.
I wanted to insulate what Trevor and I, it's not subjective. We're not sitting up here making a decision based on our arbitrary thoughts. It's literally the codified ordinance that's in place. If the applicant brings it in, it's not a permitted use. We tell them it's not a permitted use. This is the way and the procedure in which you can move forward, and that's what we have. So I'll shut up.
Anybody else like to speak?
I would.
Hello, thank you. Mike Solargi, 13005.
No, we waived the address. You don't have to say your address.
Okay. So just a quick question. So the PD district of the Johnstown Gateway did not need a traffic study because it has mechanisms built into that, as Trevor alluded. I was just wondering what mechanisms those were. Did that apply to the major economic development projects that are listed in the Gateway that get streamlined approval? And back to the mechanism, what the mechanism was, or is the mechanism just the fact that the NCA of the Gateway has the ability to issue its own millage to pay for, the roads as they see needed after the development comes? I hope that makes sense. Thank you.
It does. I don't have that document memorized by any means, but I do believe, I was referring to the new community authority that was baked into that document that can have funds be utilized for those types of improvements.
And hopefully, I think I know where Mr. Sillergy was going with that. And yes, there is a process in place that once that development comes to us fully I won't say fully baked out, but relatively finalized. There'll be traffic studies and things like that that will be in place by the developer, that will be required by the developer to ensure that the traffic they're creating or any other infrastructure that they're creating is agreeable to the city, so that they can feel confident that this isn't going to be a problem that they have to go back to later. As far as the NCA goes, that's a great point, and I didn't want to dive into that, but we'll go into a little bit of the weeds. Another defining difference between the PD district and with the LM district, you have an NCA that's created over there that can help with infrastructure, as well as some other mechanisms that are in place. Currently, the light manufacturing zone that exists on just generally everywhere in Johnstown doesn't have an NCA associated with it that could be utilized for infrastructure improvements. And typically when you're having those infrastructure analysis done from a water, sewer, street, you can bake in all of those pieces into how we're going to pay for it over time, and make it all function and flow. That area over there doesn't currently, doesn't mean it can't, but that's a lot bigger and broader conversation that I would like to have with you all at some point. But
I was actually going to ask that question.
yeah, and I would prefer not to go down that rabbit hole here, because it is so expansive, and there are probably some strategies from an economic development standpoint that may want to be discussed internally. And I think there are some provisions from an executive session standpoint for some of those to be had offline in an executive session, just to protect and insulate you all from an economic development. Teresa's desperately trying to find our provisions associated with the executive session, but I do know that economic development incentives is one of those pieces that I would, if you want to go down that, I would suggest that's the venue in which we should.
Anybody else would like to speak?
Can I have a follow-up?
Go ahead.
So I guess what I'm asking is the major economic development projects were streamlined in the Gateway PD. They go through a CODA. They do not have final development plans. With only, say, one guy going into sub-area 1, that starts a trigger that in 18 months, 300 residential units now have to be issued by this council. That's why I kind of asked what mechanism of the traffic study was in there, or if it was just the millage. Because if you only have one guy going in to sub-area 1 and now residential coming in, is that going to produce enough millage to pay, kind of like how you're talking here? Regardless, you're going to have a problem. And like Sean said, does the revenue justify that? And, you know, that's just explanation on the major economic development project being streamlined, which constitutes 300 residential units being built on page 11, I think I correct, in 18 months, now that that land is transferred. So just again, trying to see where the traffic study kind of impacts the development in the Gateway. It doesn't seem that it really, to be honest, it just doesn't seem like there really is a traffic study. You really don't know because you don't have an end user, and it's kind of really just like this scenario.
There's a requirement in the planned district code on our codified ordinances that for any preliminary development plan for any property in the planned district, required to have a traffic impact study. Is that what you're asking?
Does that include major economic development projects? Because I didn't think they didn't.
Any preliminary development plan, which would include major economic development.
So that would be in the preliminary, not the final?
Right. The
Okay.
final would come after the preliminary if you meet all the criteria for the preliminary.
I'm going to interrupt for 1 second. So, and I think maybe I understand what you're saying. If there's a traffic study, so say there's one developer, one person's building, and they do a traffic study, but congruently there's another thing being built, are their traffic studies going to reflect each other's traffic impacts if they're happening simultaneously? So if we're having 300 units being built at the same time that another data center is being built, are those traffic studies going to reflect each other's traffic impact?
They should. I mean,
Okay.
yeah, the traffic study doesn't just look at what's here right now, and we're gonna add, this one use to this one parcel. It's a comprehensive review of what's going on and what, but at the same time, if one landowner is, submits a preliminary development plan for a particular use or particular project, the question for us is what's the delta because of that project, right? So if there's another one, yeah, we want to know about it and it should be incorporated in, but that other traffic impact study is going to determine the delta of that project, and those deltas can be identified and discussed and analyzed. But-
And that's all because it's part of the planned district
Correct.
that they have to work together. So in this area, they don't have to connect because it's just a zoning.
It's a straight
District,
zoning
yeah.
district, which means if you have a project that falls under one of the allowable uses, you are entitled to that project in the story without the need for any other standards or requirements, other than, again, the building standards, height, setbacks, things of that nature.
Okay.
Thank you for your time and.
Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful questions. Anybody else? Okay. We have ordinance 30-2024 in front of us. What is the will of council?
You can move and second it and still vote no, just FYI, if you were waiting for chime in.
Just do nothing as well.
We can do nothing and it dies?
Die for lack of a motion.
Okay.
But then they have the opportunity to go back to zoning still.
Either way.
Is that correct?
Either way.
Either way.
And submit a new application. I would, for the sake of the record,
I make a motion that we move forward with ordinance 30-2024. Second.
Mayor Barnard,
No.
Wes Cobble,
No.
Bob Orsini,
Nope.
Dave Seeland,
No.
Ryan Green,
No.
Stephanie Hollis.
No.
Can council now direct that this go to planning and zoning, for planning and zoning to start working on getting this district cleaned up?
you could certainly request, and I think we have a representative here on Planning and Zoning Commission, that Planning and Zoning take a look at this and initiate something under the.
Yeah. Is council good with that?
100%.
Okay. So we're.
And I have one more question. And if they do, if this applicant does have a specific use,
They
like
can
you
bring
said,
it.
Chuck, you can apply for a conditional use for that specific.
It's a conditional use.
I'll jump in.
Yeah.
If they have a specific use and they want to bring it before the zoning and council for an amendment to your zoning text, which would permit it,
Right.
they can absolutely do that. So if they had a specific use, they could say, we have a very specific use, we want to make a recommendation to zoning, that you amend your zoning text to allow for this specific use, and then you could allow it just as a permitted use, or to your point, Tiffany, which is a good point, you could amend it to be a conditional use. Conditional uses have a different subset of parameters that could exist on them. I'm not going to bore you with the legalese, but we can follow up at a later date. Oftentimes, people say, well, we can place any condition we want. Not exactly. They have to be within a realm of acceptability. You can't just start arbitrarily saying this, this, and this. They have to make sense. But a conditional use is an option to allow something. The medical marijuana was permitted as a conditional. So before that gets approved, it has to go through a further review. They actually have to come in before the board. If it is a permitted use, they might not even have to go in before the planning and zoning board Staff would just have to outright approve it because it's a legal entitlement that exists on the property. So a conditional use would require an additional step to where it at least had to go before the board, but there is some constraints on their request that they could have on that. Sorry for a long-winded answer, but good point.
I just don't want you to leave discouraged. I feel like this is just gonna be a process for us to get done. And it was something that I think we have had conversations about for a while, so,
Just needs to get done now.
yeah, it's,
Yeah, and I think going through, like I said, going through zoning the first time, with a lack of specifics and meriting a fundamental change of the zoning code, I don't think zoning felt comfortable doing that in one session. Now with the, guidance of council, that's probably a project they're much more willing to look at because there will be parameters placed on it.
When was the last time that district was looked at for uses?
That would have been, I don't know, probably what, early 2000s, late 90s?
It was changed for the medical.
Well, yeah, the medical
Prior to
marijuana.
that, though, because that was the exception, not the rule.
Sure.
So it would have been what, 14 to 15 for the medical marijuana, and then probably like early 2000s for everything else?
Probably when I had 31 gifts on it.
That's a good point.
But those were all exceptions. I think the original thing was in the 80s.
Oh,
There you go. Okay. That was kind of, my gist was.
I think it was in the 80s.
It's the pottery.
They incorporated it into the city, I think happened in the 80s. So I think everything goes back into the 80s. I can't remember the exact.
So it's time for it to be, it's
Yeah.
time for it to be updated.
That's why I missed it.
And everything was exceptions, this time we did everything. So I might have misspoke earlier to the council, that everything that you approved, it was just an exception to the ordinance. And even last week, I think you did an exception to the ordinance.
Yeah.
And approved the thing for that. So all we're saying is, please look at it, clean it up.
Yep. Moving forward to public hearings of legislation, Resolution 2024-51. These are a bunch of house cleaning type of things that we do at the end of the year, so we'll probably move fast through some of these. So Resolution 2024-51, a resolution establishing the regular meeting dates and time for all regular city council meetings for the 2025 calendar year. The only question I have, Teresa, on this, is there a April or May election date, primary, anything like that happening this year?
Not that I saw listed.
Okay.
If one does,
There should be one in May. There should be one in May.
I didn't see it on their calendar.
What would it be for in May this year? The governor's, there'd be a primary for the governor, wouldn't there?
Yeah, it'd be your primaries or just your local.
So
I'm 75% sure there's one in May.
Well, if we find that there is, it would just be moved to that Wednesday.
Okay.
And it says that in one of the whereas. Just if an election falls on the same date as a set council meeting, council will move its meeting to the next Wednesday, so. If it did fall on one of those dates, I would just let you know.
Okay. Any,
Mr. Mayor?
yes,
Make a motion to approve Resolution 2024-51.
I have to open it to the public real quick. Jamie? Okay, go ahead, Bob.
I make a motion to approve Resolution 2024-51 as written.
second,
All right. Bob Orsini?
Yes.
Dave Seeland?
Yes.
Ryan Green?
Yes.
Tiffany Hollis?
yes,
Mayor Barnard?
Affirmative.
Wes Cobble?
Yes.
Okay, moving to Resolution 2024-52, a resolution establishing the regular meeting dates and times for all regular planning and zoning commission meetings for the 2025 calendar year. Any discussion for council on this item?
The only one that I have is October 28th, potentially conflicting with some festivities here in the city. I know it has the last 3 years.
What is that one?
They have Halloween and Fall Fest things going on that day, so I know that people on the commission would probably be happy if that one was changed.
Strike it.
Strike it altogether.
Strike it for now and add it back later.
we can
right?
always add it back.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Strike October 28th?
Yep. Any other comments from council? Jamie?
No comments.
Okay. What is the will of council?
Make a motion to approve Resolution 2024-52 with the strike of October 28th, as amended by Councilman Green.
Second,
Bob Orsini?
Yes.
Dave Sealand?
Yes.
Ryan Green?
Yes.
Tiffany Hollis?
Yes.
Mayor Barnard?
Yes.
Wes Cole?
Yes.
Resolution 2024-53, a resolution establishing submission deadlines for Planning and Zoning Commission and Design Review Board applications in the 2025 calendar year. Questions or comments from council?
So in our rules, well, this is actually further out than the rules, correct? The council rules? Yeah.
Much.
As long as staff feels there's enough time to get everything done.
You moved it back, what, last year? It's 4 weeks now.
Yeah.
So, you feel like that's enough time?
It's never enough time.
A lot of cities are a month out, so.
In certain situations, we've been able to move it forward quicker than that, but it does help because we have the defensible document in place saying, by requirement, we have the ability to walk it at this particular pace. And sometimes when we get a heavy load of applicants all in at the same time, we need that appropriate time to do that. So outside of that, I think sometimes we're able to, but it does give us some discretion internally whether we move it quicker or at the pace that you all put forward. So I feel okay with where we're at right now.
Okay. Any other comments from council? Jamie? Okay. Was the will of council?
Make a motion to pass resolution 2024-53 as written.
I'll second.
Bob Orsini?
Yes.
Dave Sealand?
Yes.
Ryan Green?
Yes.
Tiffany Hollis?
Yes.
Mayor Barnard?
Yes.
Wes Cole?
Yes.
Okay, resolution 2024-55, a resolution establishing the 25 schedule of holidays for the city of Johnstown. Any questions or comments on this one?
I got a question.
Mhm.
So your day of what would be New Year's Eve, how busy are the offices that day? Just curious.
I don't recall them being very busy.
I'll defer to Teresa. She's probably had a better visual on that than I do.
I mean, New Year's Eve, like December 31st?
Yes.
The day? Probably completely dead, but I mean, it's a day that we're open. I'm sure people trickle in and don't really count it.
For our department, it's a day that they're not allowed to take off.
Well, I mean, yeah, you have to deal with that, right? Jack, how about your folks? I mean, obviously, someone's got a water plant, but I mean, outside of necessaries.
We have very little work orders or anything scheduled that day, but the plants both have to run.
Past the water, like for the utility billing office, it's a very slow day because the due date for water bills is the 25th. Most people have already paid and they're not gonna be able to get their new bill.
So Wes, you're thinking that's the 31st on the list?
That or even just a half day, you know?
Sure.
I mean, that was my initial thoughts.
So,
Or the day after.
so the question
Half
comes
day the
in
day after.
that we've had discussion about, that we cannot do that at this point.
Because of the negotiations.
Union negotiations. Well, because we're in union negotiations right now, it could be like a carrot or a stick by adding something or taking something away.
Then let's let lie.
Yeah.
And the contract that we currently have with the police officers is of its own. So whatever you did here, we would have to get approval to amend that particular contract. Love where your head's at. I appreciate the thought, but it doesn't open up probably a longer dialogue. And because we're in negotiations right now, it could further complicate it.
I don't think that there would be any objection.
I think we're probably better served waiting until the current negotiations. are
I would like to see the
completed
current
and then
negotiations
going back and-
get completed, then we can look at adding.
Sure. We don't want to do anything to jeopardize that.
There's next year as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
We talked about that just before, right before council started.
Oh.
Okay. Anybody else?
I do have another question.
Yeah.
What happened to 54? We went from 2024-53 to 2024-55.
Good question.
I believe that,
54 was
That was a joke. You don't really have to answer that.
Santa.
54 was Santa Claus.
Oh, okay, we pushed that up, gotcha. All right.
the beginning,
Yeah, okay, yeah.
just a little out of order.
Good catch. Jamie?
Make a motion.
Amy, we're just required.
I know, understood, thank you.
Jamie would like all these same holidays. Actually off.
I make a motion to pass resolution 2024-55 as written.
I'll second.
Bob Orsini?
Yes.
Dave Seeling?
Yes.
Brian Green?
Yes.
Tiffany Hollis?
Yes.
Mayor Barnard?
Yes.
Wes Cole?
Yes.
Moving to resolution 2024-56. Resolution to appoint city law director, city prosecutor, and municipal court magistrate to serve the city and its employees for the year 2025. Does councilor have any questions or comments?
Question I have on that one for law director, I know we had some discussion earlier in the year about opening up potential bidding.
I don't see a need to bid it. I mean, find a law firm that specializes in all the areas that we have at this point. I mean, that's just my thought, but it's up to council if they want to.
Frost Brown Town is also helping us through the union negotiation?
No, that's a different,
Dave Riefenhoff, but-
that's an employee relations.
There's no overlap? Okay.
There's if you're asking for the list of items that currently Frost Brown and Todd is engaged in is zoning matters, usually through THAD. That seems to be his specialty, so the PD district he is intimately acquainted with, as he helped obviously amend and draft some of that. Obviously, Steve Samuels from an environmental standpoint, Emmett Kelly, who's also instrumental in our economic development piece. We currently are working through a site through a developer's agreement associated with CRAs, TIFs, and he's currently working through that. And then general legal counsel, Yaz is a catch-all, poor guy, and has to fill in the blanks wherever somebody doesn't. So as far as individuals that are associated with the city, associated with Frost Brown Todd, Emmett, Thad, Yaz, and Steve Samuels at this particular moment, and there are some open tabs we're currently working through.
I just bring it up because we did have that conversation.
Were there any proposals of alternatives brought up, or was just a broad brushstroke offered?
We talked about it with a couple other positions, and I know that it had been
I mean, but
roughly,
like
roughly
an
7
actual-
years.
An actual replacement, I mean, like, I know the idea was brought up, but what alternatives were?
I don't think we brought, potential candidates up.
Okay.
We just talked about it. It'd been roughly 7 years since we had taken a look, so.
Any other questions or comments from council? Nothing from Jamie? What's the will of council on resolution 2024-56?
Move to approve resolution 2024-56 as written.
Second.
Dave Seeling?
Yes.
Brian Green?
Yes.
Tiffany Hollis?
Yes.
Mayor Barnard?
Yes.
Wes Cole?
Yes.
Bob Orsini?
Yes.
Okay, we're out of resolutions. Moving to ordinance 31-2024, an ordinance to approve expenses and other expenditures of the city of Johnstown, Licking County, state of Ohio during the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2025 and ending December 31st, 2025. Grab my notes. Grab my notes. Okay, this budget will provide for a 4% increase in wages for all personnel, 4 new employees, a police officer, street employee, planner, economic development director. Move $600,000 from our general fund to the rainy day fund to reestablish our bond rating. And then possible road projects if approved by the state funding or federal funding?
OPWC.
OPWC will be Douglas Street, Liberty, Pershing, McCracken, Druin, and Fairview. Those are the highlights of the budget. What are council's questions on it?
So appreciate all the work that Finance Committee has done on this. Hopefully everybody's taken a look at it as well. I see we're gonna be giving 4% raise. We have, 5 employees there that will be
It's,
hiring?
just for clarity, it's up to.
Up to 4%.
There's no guarantee. That's been accounted for in the case of.
Okay. The 5 employees we're hiring. 4. Okay, so we have a police officer, we have a member of our service department, we have a planner, which I believe we definitely need the planner to get back on track from where we were a couple of years ago. And we have
economic
economic development. So with the economic development, I know that's a newer position. We don't technically have a wage scale for that. We don't have a job description for that. The other ones we do. I'm wondering if we leave that one off. Also, I'm not quite sure that we've hashed out what that employee will do. I understand if we want to put it in there as a placeholder maybe, but that employee, going out, looking for grants, bringing new business in, all the things that somebody in that line of work does, we haven't, in the last couple of years, we haven't really gone down the road of allowing those types of projects. So unless there's going to be a change of some sort, I'm not sure that we add that person. The 600,000, the rainy day fund, do we have, so I know that we're trying to get our bond rating to come back. There was money that was put into paying down some debt service. Do we have, are we able to show that that was paid off? Or what is the current status of that?
Mr. Delaney?
Which one?
200,000?
So we had the money that came in from the sale of the property. We used that money.
Actually, that's 200,000 was put into the budget stabilization.
Okay.
Along with 400 from the general fund.
Okay. And it was used to pay off the previous bond, or?
No, it was put into when the sale happened, we put it into the capital CIP fund.
Okay.
But we didn't pay down on that loan. That loan was roughly 2 to 4%.
Okay. So we're gonna use that to pay down on the loan this year, is the plan, or?
But we put that in the budget stabilization.
Okay.
In this budget.
Okay. And then we have money that's coming out in terms of road funding, if we're able to get the grants for that. Okay.
Coming out of CIP.
That'll come out, yeah. And then we have our JAG project, which I know is in here somewhere, but I don't know that it's necessarily broken out in a way that everybody could find it quickly. We'll have money that comes out for that as well, or that's just in our legal costs?
It's woven through the.
Woven through?
All of it. You didn't get the internal email?
I know there was an email, yeah, I saw that what we had in costs last year, it was roughly 230, something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Overall.
You'd have to look at the numbers to be specific.
I wish I had my computer in front of me. Okay. I just wanted to be clear on where that one was headed.
I'm not sure what your questions are, Mr. Green. We talked about this in Finance Committee. Nothing's changed from then to now.
No, I'm just being clear on it. Like I said, the extra employee there for economic development, I don't know that we add that one. I mean, is the intent to be a placeholder?
Well,
We haven't really fleshed out the position. I know the other ones were just kind of replacing people
I
that
think the
left.
placeholder would have to exist in order to flesh it out and develop a job description, correct? Because if we're gonna talk about it, we have to have the.
Staff can
ability
manage
to
the
have it.
job description the way they want. An economic development person would be to the benefit of the city, and a great deal so. Would be able to leverage up their cost to their value is the goal. So sure, it was put in there if we have the opportunity to hire someone, we can. If it's not appropriated, the staff can't even put out, a job, help wanted, so it really limits us. You have to put the horse.
Well, if we're
before
gonna create a position, it's definitely something that I'd like to discuss. Some of the ways that we've done business here in the past don't necessarily merit that person. It was kind of a hybrid of our planner and our city manager in the past. This would be a new position that we hadn't really discussed yet. We're just putting the funding in place.
pure economic development position to do all the general policy, economic development, drive business, grant writing, all the general stuff. Whatever's happened in the past, I don't think was discussed at all.
Do we have a salary range for that position? Like how much is being appropriated for that?
I'd have to go back and look
Dave, what was
specifically.
appropriated?
85,000.
That's but there's no way you're gonna get someone in at this point, if you put it out there, it's gonna take you 3 to 4 months to get someone even in, so that 85,000 would more than cover.
And that's just salary, that's not, doesn't include benefits package, anything like that? To be appropriate?
That would all be rolled up in our formula.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions or comments from council?
I have one other question.
Yes, ma'am.
So the bond rating, I guess I'm just looking for clarification, because I thought our bond rating was AA.
No, it was.
We have no rating.
We have no rating, right? But I thought that was because it was withdrawn because of not having the audit filed.
It was not the audit, it was the audit, it was multiple factors. It was the audit plus our financial standing at this point. I mean, the majority of it's the audit.
And then I also thought that they were reevaluating the way they do smaller municipalities, the bond ratings. So I thought that there was a pause on that for that reason also.
They didn't bring that up at the meeting, did they? We had experts coming from Fifth Third, was it? KeyBank, sorry.
KeyBank, yeah.
That talked about the bond rating. We can follow up on it to find out.
Well, and the rainy day fund is an earmarking of funds that are unallocated so that we can show our available funding versus what our top line revenue is for that calculation they're looking for, just to show that we have something in savings. It doesn't mean it's stuck there. I mean, as you know, this body could change any or all of this at any point. If you think there's a better place for it, the reason we didn't use it to pay down debt is because the debt is so low that divide and leverage that forward to pay off debt isn't a good mathematical calculation.
So we're
Yeah,
earning more on
that
our
was
interest.
like, honestly, like,
Yeah.
that was my concern, is just making sure that I'd rather not pay off debt.
Not low debt, right?
Yes.
So, and here's the other thing too, if we pay it off early, we don't get an advantage.
There's no-
Those things
the-
are baked
the
in. So
interest is
the
the
total
interest
cost is
is-
baked in from day one.
Right.
You could pay off the loan the first week or the term of the loan, it costs you the same amount.
Right. And I do apologize, I missed some finance committee
No,
meetings.
it was-
I might have missed those conversations.
I'll look for the packet they gave us and get you a copy. Yes, sir.
In that budget stabilization, that money can only be moved with council's approval, as far as transferred out.
Right.
Well, the nice thing about the budget, is it can all be moved, changed around.
No, yes.
I mean, we're voting to pass a balanced budget as we have to.
Well, with
But it can always- it's
earnest
always
effort,
subject to change.
effort to show direction and intention of the finance committee, to run that through the board or the full council, and then the council says, maybe we do this, maybe we do that, and make adjustments and tweaks. I'm hoping that every year it gets better, so that these happen before, the final vote day, so we all know what we're looking at ahead of time, and we'll get there. But yeah, everything's changeable, everything's adjustable. Staff cannot spend money that isn't appropriated, that's a fact.
So
Yeah.
essentially,
No,
the
and we do
budget,
this at the absolute worst time of year for everyone's schedule. I mean, it just is that way.
but essentially the budget is like a comprehensive plan. It is a guide.
It's a little bit of both. It's a guide and zoning, because when we put it into a bucket, say the general fund, he cannot spend anything outside of that, of general fund,
Without it coming back.
without it coming back for
Right.
council. So
But if someone in the public were looking at the budget, it doesn't mean that
Yes.
dollar amount is not spent. It's just,
It's appropriated.
yes,
It's just different than spent,
yes,
which is why we have carryovers.
yeah.
What department
Just trying to
is that
clarify
bond
for-
being Paid back out of.
it depends,
200,000.
it depends on, so that bond, there's three bonds, I think 2020, 2015, and 2017 are the three bonds?
Because I'm
So
just thinking,
the bonds come out of, because some of the bonds come out of water, sewer, and general, depend on what they were used for, and they're allocated based on what the bond money was used for. So I know the one bond was taken out for the new water tower. So the money that was used for the water tower, that gets allocated to water and sewer, or just water?
well, just water,
Yeah.
but the sale of the property brought in the 200,000.
It brought in 900,000, and 350 went to sewer, 350 went to water, 200 went to general.
We try to divide it up based upon what the initial buy-in departments came out of as a percentage.
Your department got got its money back from where,
Okay, yeah, I just needed.
yes, yours was allocated.
Wanted to make sure
Yes.
that, because I knew a good portion of those bond payments were coming out of the water and sewer.
Yes.
That money got back. into
Yeah, the
the fund.
350 went back into each one of the debt services for water and sewer. Or was it 375? It was.
I
Yes.
got it.
No, but what your question is, yes, we looked at that, we allocated back based on percentage. as close as we could with round numbers and not pennies. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions from council?
I just sent the bond rating information to council members.
Okay, that packet? Okay, thank you. Jamie? Okay. What was the will of council for ordinance 31-2024? Make a motion that we move forward, or pass ordinance 31-2024 as written?
Second.
Mayor Barnard.
Yes.
Wes Cobble.
Yes.
Bob Orsini.
Yes.
Dave Seeley.
Yes.
Ryan Green.
Yes.
Tiffany Holland.
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 31-2024, an ordinance to approve expenses and other expenditures of the city of Johnstown, Licking County, state of Ohio, or sorry, ordinance 33-2024, an ordinance to realign permanent appropriations by modifying appropriations from one account to another within the fund, and amending ordinance 24-2023 to approve necessary changes of appropriations. And we would waive the second reading on this. So this is cleaning up all the funds for the end of year. In conversations with Mr. Delaney, and he will recap them in a second. You will see the general fund up top, water operating, sewer operating, street construction, American Rescue Plan Act, Water Enterprise Improvement Fund. I'll take the three bottom ones. These are changes to the revenue. These were funds that we received in from different sources that were getting appropriated back to those items. So that's those three items. The general one is mostly salaries and insurance, and I'll let Dave take it over for the rest to explain what each of these items are up to.
Thank you. Regarding the first box, the general fund, the first amount is really due to the police officers. We had excessive overtime this year due to a few of our officers being out. And as one, I guess putting that new officer in for next year is going to help with this area. The next one is some of the insurance. You'll notice the next couple between funds, our insurance has increased. Obviously, we increased our budget for next year also. So our medical insurance, that's the next line item. The last one in general is the, I mentioned this prior, was the council members as far as the additional meetings. We budgeted, I think, average of two a month, and probably average 2.5 to 3 a month in this past year. Water operating fund, this is just another area where we were with the last pay of the year, salaries and insurance, actually with both water operating and sewer operating, we're just making sure that those funds are adequate to handle the last pay and insurance of benefits for the last month, and we were just, there's no change in those funds, but just reallocating and realigning for the insurance and salaries. And obviously, Donnie mentioned the street construction. That was actually insurance proceeds that we received of $10,852. Those replaced signs are the streetlights, I believe, on Main Street in the NOA. And then the American Rescue Plan, those were funds that we received, and we have to appropriate and before the end of the year to utilize those. And also the last one is the Water Enterprise Improvement, and that's for the expansion water plant. And these are really, the main one is cleaning up the financials for the end of the year.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Delaney on these items? Jamie? Thank you. Okay, I move that we pass ordinance 33-2024 as written. Oh, sorry.
Waive the two readings.
Yes, that's, okay.
Okay.
Oh, do I have to do a separate motion? Yes. You told me that today, too. And you wrote it down in my notes? I make a motion that we waive the second reading of ordinance 33-2024.
Second.
Mayor Barnard.
Yes.
Wes Cobble.
Yes.
Bob Orsini.
Yes.
Dave Seeley.
Yes.
Ryan Green.
Yes.
Tiffany Holland.
Yes.
Okay, I make a motion that we pass ordinance 33-2024 as written.
Second?
Mayor Barnard.
Yes.
Wes Cole.
Yes.
Bob Rickson.
Yes.
Bruce Stevens.
Yes.
Ryan Green.
Yes.
Kathleen Dawn.
Yes.
Okay. Introduction of legislation, ordinance 32-2024, an ordinance to amend the Johnstown Gateway PD district map by adding 2 parcels totaling 17.7 acres to sub-area 5 of the PD district. Mr. McNally, would you like to say anything about this? Thank you for staying with us.
Yeah, who did you make mad that you got to go last after all of that?
No, it's good. I mean, you can't, Santa's like a tough act.
Can you give us your address? Tiffany's going to send your wife chocolates.
No, my address. I am homeless right now, actually. We haven't moved it. We're moving houses right now, so we're living with my in-laws right now.
Oh, so you're happy to be here.
So, yeah, staying late is not the worst thing right now.
You should add.
It's on the record though, right?
You should add.
Well,
Recorded.
You should add.
It's on YouTube.
It's been great living with it.
It's on YouTube.
Yeah, no. It's been awesome living with them, but yeah, just for a couple weeks, so.
Okay.
Okay, so, with the plan development, we use the term a lot, filling in some of the missing teeth. And right now, we were proactively annexing and zoning the 17.7 acres into sub-area 5. The idea is that this is sub-area 5. Now that Cologic's advancing with their data center, we're hoping that we can get the orange area, which is sub-area 5. I have maps here if you guys do.
We have them. I like maps.
Go on, pass them.
Yeah, you need them? Oh, they're color.
Yeah, but the concept is that we would bring in an industrial user ideally, but a different use so that the city can continue to balance its tax base. So it probably would not be a data center user. We're proactively trying to share the sites in front of some industrial users that would create jobs. But we don't have a deal in place right now. But what we're doing is trying to de-risk the site from the buyer's perspective and get it to speed to market, and also rounding out the rest of the site, so.
Where is Cologix going in this?
They are the blue, 154 acres of the blue.
Where's their first building going to go, do you know?
The first two buildings will be coming online most likely along Duncan Plains on the northern portion of their site. So they will be able to tap into the water and sanitary that's already there across the street from Duncan Plains, which is great because there's minimal investments that need to get made to bring their first building or first two buildings online. That gives us time to coordinate the water line loop and sanitary loop throughout the rest of the planned development.
There, on Duncan Plains, there's the area blue that borders it, but there's a rectangle land that you guys do not own there, correct? Right in the middle of that?
Along Duncan Plains. Oh, yes, yes,
That one
yes,
will hold
yes,
on.
yeah.
So Cologix would go on both sides of that, or?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Most likely, yeah.
Okay.
I can't really speak for them, and I think they're still in their conceptual design phase, but based on where utilities are, it makes the most sense that they develop north to south.
Okay. This is an ordinance. This is the first reading. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. McDonough? Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you for the, Thank you. Thank you. That concludes legislation for tonight. Other business, I just have something real quick to say. I wanted to, we recognized the police officers tonight. I wanted to recognize Chief Smart. I know Ryan and I were the only two here 2.5 years ago when the former chief was no longer here and you took over. And I wanted to commend you for the job you've done for the last 2.5 years. You have not lost a single officer in that time. The city's went through a roller coaster time. we're seeing your officers commended by different people, and I don't think in the history of the department anybody's went that long without losing anybody. So I just wanted to thank you for keeping your team together that long. And that's all I had for other business. Anybody else?
I did look it up. There is a May 6th election, so we'll need to change that because we have a council date there.
Oh, it'll just be May 7th?
Yep. I don't know if we need to make
I think
anything official.
in the resolution, it said it always.
It does, yeah.
Yep.
I can change it before I
Publicize it.
publish it. Yeah, I'll just make sure.
Okay. Dave?
Next weekend, Saturday is a kind of a busy day. We have breakfast at the Legion, but then also Wreaths Across America as well. So come have a good breakfast, get loaded up, and then head on out to the cemetery for Wreaths Across America.
That is what, the
21st.
Thank you to our staff and our service department for cleaning up the truck and trailer for the parade. Everything looked great. We had a fun time. Everything worked really nicely.
I'll piggyback off that. Kudos to you, Tiffany, and everybody else that was involved with pulling that off. I had a good time. Everybody else I spoke with had a good time. And it was just a great experience. And one of the great things about living here in town.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Bob?
Good.
Anybody else, Steph?
I do,
Sorry.
yeah. I have 3 things. Don't hate me. One, do we have an update from Frank Sia? We got
He-
media.
He's supposed to be coming after the first of the year. He is working on, has he talked to you, Teresa, about working on stuff for the next newsletter?
Yeah, we're in process now. so.
Okay.
And then, Sean, I had a question for you.
Sure.
Have you talked to anyone from Armstrong? And actually, the building's for sale, so.
What?
Yeah.
Sorry if I
No,
just.
no, you're fine. I want to put everything in the non-escalated situation because there's absolutely nothing to be concerned about.
Yeah, they're not leaving.
So I met with Armstrong
2 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago. We were invited just to have a visitation. So everything is going fantastic at that particular plant. They're very happy with where they are. The sale of the building, and I want to make sure, I know we're on video, so I'll dance delicately. It's not uncommon for buildings that have a tenant in it to be marketed because of the success or the long-term tenant situation. So it's kind of.
That's all I really needed to know is,
Yeah.
I mean,
They're
I have a
not- they're
great
not
relationship with Armstrong, but,
Oh, no.
so I was like,
Nope.
you know, I started getting questions. I just didn't.
No,
know what
the
the
building's
answer
for
to that
sale, but not the business, and they're not leaving. They don't, Armstrong currently doesn't own their own building.
Okay.
They lease.
That makes
And
sense.
so, obviously, when you have a fantastic tenant, if you're marketing it, what a better time.
Yeah.
So all that,
They're actually developing a product that they were trying to get in front of state and federal legislature
Yeah.
to, these ceiling tiles, they create the ceiling tiles, but there is a product they put on the back side of them, a liquid, that freezes when it goes under 72 degrees. And then the next day, when the building warms back up, that liquid unfreezes and it helps cool the building and not use so much air conditioning. It's a wild product, but they're trying to get state and federal legislators to change some tax codes to make it more affordable. But it's supposed to help save energy, a lot of energy. So it's a really cool product they're trying to develop.
And then, third thing, this is probably going to be a little bit of a longer conversation, not right now, longer conversation, but vacation time for staff. You use it or lose it, is that correct?
120 hours is what we're allowed to carry over. And if we have anything past that, then it is a use it or lose it situation. Right now, in our current situation, it's 120. Is that consistent with the police union negotiation? That may be,
The police is a little bit different, because you have years of service, you can, I believe that you can go up to 240, but it's based on the amount of service time you have. But for everybody else within the city, it's 120.
right, we operate within the current handbook.
And is that amendable?
Handbook is, again, I would recommend not doing anything at this moment because we are going through the union negotiations. Whether you wanted to amend it upward or downward, I would definitely recommend holding tight on that at its current moment, just because of the union negotiations that are currently happening. That doesn't help you out, I'm sorry.
No, it's just like, I mean, like Teresa, I know that it's very stressful for her to have vacation and to take vacation and to actually use vacation. So if there is a better way,
What
while
council-
we're short-staffed, to make sure that.
After this.
So does it force you to take the vacation?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Most-
maybe it's better to keep it that way. I don't know.
Most employers, like my employer, probably Bob's, my employer, you can carry up 240, but we're all in use or lose, and we have to identify it before December 1st that we're going to use these days, or we lose them, so.
My employer's a jerk, get no vacation.
But we have waived it, we have waived the rule with Teresa because
The 1 year, but when we were between
we were,
utility billing.
yes, we didn't have the staff and we waived her so that she.
Council, well, I think city manager
Yeah.
has the authority
They allowed-
to allow it to be carried over.
They
So
did allow me to do more than 1 year.
it's an internal decision, and I did that last year, but I obviously brought those conversations to you all just to kind of vet the justification. And I felt it was justified, and I wanted to obviously let you know and make you aware that these were things that I was feeling very strongly about. And so obviously I allowed Teresa to carry over hers because at one point it was just you and I in the office, literally.
Well, and that's why I just want to make sure that we're being sensitive.
There's no days off.
You know, yeah,
If there was
to that.
That's like that particular year, I mean, I'd certainly would come to
2 years
Sean
ago,
or
Sean
you.
did the same with us as well. There was a number of individuals that, you know, based on our scheduling, they just couldn't take off. They were trying to take off and they couldn't, and, you know, the justification was shown to Sean, and Sean, you know, allowed them to roll that over because they had valid points of why they couldn't use it.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that we do have something in place so that,
that's a good question.
especially under short staff, you know, situations.
Anything else?
No, that was my
Okay.
three.
That is it. Make a motion that we adjourn at 8:37.
Second.
All in favor?
Before 9 o'clock.
Amazing.
Kroger.
I think we actually lost our stream about an hour ago.
Oh, no.
We lost it like